goal tonight is to talk through how the project behind us came to be and what that process was, where it started, when you rolled into it and made it even more crazy than I had imagined it to be. This project started for me as going to see my dad's friend vintage race his 911, 60s 911. And that day at Fontana, I knew I wanted to vintage race a Porsche. So in 2009, I bought a 68 912. The plan was to rebuild that 4-cylinder and go vintage racing. And I started to piece together that engine build for 100 horsepower, and I couldn't justify, you know, putting $10,000 to $15,000 in a vintage 912 engine.
I remember this. This is when you proposed that it might be a good idea to put a Subaru engine
Correct.
in the car. Okay.
Correct. So after I realized how much I was going to spend on 100 horsepower, I thought to myself, there's got to be a flat 4 that's more affordable that I could put in this thing. So in 2010, I bought a 2004 Subaru STI 4-cylinder, 300 horsepower, 300 foot-pounds of torque. That sounded like a much better idea. Kennedy Engineering made an adapter plate, clutch and pressure plate, got that to adapt it to the 901 trans. Shortly thereafter, I realized to myself, that transmission is not a great transmission to go race with 300 horsepower.
Yeah,
not fast shifting.
thing, yeah.
It just wasn't worth putting the money in. Next stage of the process was to get a 996 6-speed, start doing that conversion to the Subaru. And around that time, some of my friends were saying, you know, if you're going to get this crazy, you might as well put a 911 drivetrain in it. So that's
that when you started like started thinking all-wheel drive?
Well, first I started thinking water-cooled 911, so like a 2004 911 turbo. And obviously that's a 4-wheel drive application, so I thought I might as well use the entire drivetrain out of that. So then I sourced my 996 twin turbo, my front differential, and I purchased RSR, early RSR bodywork, fiberglass bodywork, to kind of finish off the bodywork of the car. That's right around when you came by the shop and we started talking through what it was going to be, what the track was going to be, the wheel and tire package. And after you left, I put an 18 by 12 rear tire up under the rear wheel arch and found out that basically there's no way to package, number one, that tall of a tire, nor that wide of a tire underneath that RSR bodywork and get any kind of realistic ground clearance.
Yeah,
I was 6 inches out of the ground at full jounce.
I remember I fell in love with the project right when you showed it to me. When I saw it, you were already along the lines of all-wheel drive, 911 drivetrain. And just to give you some context, I was competing in the Optima Ultimate Streetcar Challenge, and with the heavy late model 911s, still doing okay, but I wanted something nimble, light, small, with a lot of horsepower. And I just remember seeing your project. I was like, that right there could do some damage, and it's cool. And I mean, it's cool.
So that was 2017 when we had this first discussion.
Seems like longer ago.
And you and I have been nerding out on exactly how we're going to skin this cat, what we're going to do.
How the hell we're going to pay for it.
Well, yeah. Always the big problem with personal projects. So at the end of 2018 is when I started to outline the car you and I had somewhat decided on. This is the width it's going to be. This is the drivetrain configuration, which was a rear engine, 4-wheel drive deal.
And a little bit of a departure from the RSR body. So
Huge departure.
So you can get the wheels outside of the envelope of the fender line and the rear window.
Correct. To keep the factory hood line with that wide of a tire, you physically have to move it out so it doesn't get into the hood.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because we got the ride height so low. I didn't want to build a car where I basically had to run a high ride height and then just fill and stink bug it and just fill the rest of the distance between the bottom of the tub and the ground with artificial bodywork. Mm-hmm. So I started laying this out, and in 2018 is when I did my bodywork version as a packaging model. Prior to starting to outline my body, a close buddy, Andreas Emoji, did some early sketches for me. He was the first one to do sketches, and that kind of spawned really the first variation of this.
Right.
In 2019 is when this project really started to get some traction with you and I.
Yeah, because it was one of those things that, like, after Andreas did the drawings, and then you kept tweaking on the surfacing of everything like that. It started to almost take on a life of itself, and then we started saying, okay, well, the feasibility of this actually is there. It does look good. We could probably really do some damage here.
So after I did my first conceptual bodywork that had all the like fender surfaces, I decided what I really need to do is stop trying to do this on my own and get designers involved. So I put together a mechanical packaging model, which I could share with designers so that they could do their work around the mechanical stuff that I knew worked.
So what does that mean? Mechanical surface package, or mechanical package that they can surface around. So you mean like wheel and tire criteria, wheelbase, engine placement.
Wheels and tires in their positions, with bump and droop numbers, engine in position, trans in position, seat in position. And after I looked over Andreas's sketches, another artist I got involved, his name is Kevin Smith. What I asked of him, because I really didn't know what I wanted aesthetically, I asked him to come up with, I think he came up with like 8 different variations of bodywork in 2D sketches of different front end bodywork concepts and rear end bodywork concepts. And this is fundamentally what I had chosen as from an aesthetic point of view early on in 2019. And then it got iterated from there. So after Kevin came up with the sketches, I kind of honed in on what I was looking for aesthetically. That's when Oil Stain Labs got involved. And Oil Stain Labs carried out the sketches and my mechanical constraints model into something that was far more representative of what the car would look like. And this was a process that went through a number of iterations and, you know, seeing what I liked, seeing what my friends liked, what you liked. And in the middle of 2019, Oil Stain Labs came back to me with some renderings that were absolutely incredible. And then at the end of that year, Oil Stain Labs finished up their final renderings of what the car would look like. And that's these. So this is still, you know, a rear engine, 4-wheel drive, water-cooled Metzger.
If you look at the rear fender profile in that picture that you just brought up, and you stand behind the car right now, it's almost identical. I mean, everything's laid out to what you guys set off in the trajectory of that design.
And at the end of the day, it gives credit to Oil Stain Labs that they were able to use Kevin's sketches and they were able to massage all of those sketches into 3-dimensional bodywork that we eventually turned into a real car. So 2019 was a big year of progress for the aesthetics of the car. And then in 2020, we started formulating an idea of maybe how we're going to do this and started getting more serious about building the engine and building the transmission and building all the parts we'd use. Then at the end of 2021, you came to me and said, holy shit, this may happen.
I think we're going to do this
in a different way. I think we're going to do this in a very serious way. Somebody else is involved. But then Betim got his crazy hat on again and decided to reconfigure the drivetrain. So
yeah, I love the exact concept that you guys all came up with. I just wanted to take something, and if I was to build a tool for a specific job, I wanted to take advantage of the open canvas that we had from a mechanical and a drivetrain standpoint. So how do you make anything quicker? You take the engine out from the rear, because that's a huge portion of the weight of the car, right? On a lightweight car, it's a big chunk. So centralize it. Biggest challenge was, how do we all-wheel drive it? We're looking, do we run the drive shaft underneath? And you've noodled over this for countless hours, and then you know, you're like, I think we have to go over the top of the engine, and then get rid of the single plenum, split plenum, so you can run it right next to the alternator, and then down as an armrest, the drive shaft goes to the front differential, or the prop shaft. So that solved that problem. The other one was trying to package everything within the kind of essentially footprint that a typical 911 would take, so it didn't look like a Cayman or a Carrera GT or something that wasn't Porsche, right? Because the greenhouse is wildly important to retain, which I thought that was elegant with what you guys have come up with. So, and I said, no matter what we do, we can't touch the greenhouse. Even the gutters, got to keep them in, even though they're tremendously detrimental to our aero, but
Yeah.
like we had to keep them. Then in order to get a driver package in there, you said, hey, we got to move the engine back. So then, well, shit,
Wheelbase.
wheelbase.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
Bodywork changes.
Yeah, longer wheelbase, more stability, better center of gravity, all the fun stuff that happens in the engineering side of things. And then, but that proposed some pretty big challenges to how do we make this thing look good? How do we package the ugly duckling? Because now you have a 13-inch wide front wheel, 13-inch rear wheel. They're huge. They're tall.
That was another thing. So what happened when this particular program, this race program happened, is that we went from having a 26-inch tall tire to a 28-inch tall tire.
Right.
We went from having rear engine configuration to mid-engine configuration, and all of these things just made all of these tight tolerance aspects we'd already designed in even worse. And package a bigger tire, package a wider tire. The nice thing about running the drive shaft over the top of the engine is it got us to get the CG of the engine absolutely as
On
low
the
as
deck,
possible,
yeah.
arguably too low,
Yeah.
just for ground clearance purposes. But I think from a performance standpoint, this went from being, the SVRSR that was going to be a street legal / race car
Arguably a supercar in the 911
world
Yeah.
to being a full-blown race car. No compromises, put all the weight and package everything as ideal as possible, once again, within the constraints of OE greenhouse. So up until the beginning of 2022, Oil Stain Lab had given me basically the detailed bodywork aesthetically for what I was going to build as a rear engine car. When this program got kicked off, we needed to refine and develop the bodywork again for a mid-engine application.
Also, go from concept to actually how do we
100%.
how do we make parts?
Oil Stain Lab did some variations of the bodywork for a mid-engine configuration, and once they were done, we ended up getting in touch with Veris.
Veris, as you know, helped us out in 2019. It was arguably a big game changer for what a 911 looked like at the mountain. Every time we approached Pikes Peak, it was, what did Porsche have on the shelf on the bigger car, either the R or the RSR, and we kind of put that stuff on there. Veris had that dual element wing. They had a lot of fun ideas for how to make a 911 make more grip, aerodynamic downforce, and not accumulate the drag that's usually associated with that.
Got it.
Then they helped us in 2019, 2021, they were a big part of that. And then as you started kind of piecing it together with the Oil Stain Lab, that's when we said, well, we have to have them run through the CFD numbers and see if this thing actually moves through the air, which it's trying to make a pig fly, which is, it's an ugly greenhouse from an aerodynamic standpoint. Everything else, the air flows, a lot of the air flows through the chassis around, which is nice, but the greenhouse is a tough one. So they had their work cut out for them.
And they bit off far more than that. I mean,
Oof.
They ended up not only doing the CFD and bodywork iterations through CFD, but flanging and detailing all the parts. And,
everything.
I mean,
all the detail work.
the engineering side of this project really took a month and a half.
Mechanically.
Almost the aero. I mean,
Oh yeah, they ripped through it too, yeah.
because we were doing the mechanical design in parallel with the bodywork design, and when you're trying to do that with two different groups of people,
Yeah, they're kicking molds off while we're still designing
designing part of chassis.
Yeah.
So just that relationship in general was an amazing process to go through. I can't imagine doing that with anybody else.
No. And here we are now, in the middle of building this thing out, seeing the vision through. I know you still want to build some rear engine versions of this,
Definitely.
which I want one, but it's funny because if you look back, I remember you showing me pictures of you sanding on a yellow 912. Had to have been, 12 years ago? 13 years ago 2009?
That was in 2010, yeah.
Yeah, and then to now, sometimes you have to explain to people the vision changes, the the progress of something changes, but if you want to see it through, you have to kind of adapt and figure out where you can see this project through.
The thing that's funny is so many car guys like us have projects, personal projects. You've got 2 sitting in the parking lot outside.
Right. Which my doors are on.
Yeah, the doors are on this right now. And there is a natural progression when you have a personal project of trying to iron out in your head what you want to build. You start to accumulate some parts. This project in particular is on its 4th engine, because originally it was a 912 4-cylinder, then it was a Subaru engine. My car will still be a water-cooled Metzger,
right?
And now we're in a modern
9A1.
Yeah,
direct injection engine. Yeah,
and we haven't even fired up a car.
Yeah,
arguably it's on its 4th or 5th transmission variation.
Yeah, second front differential or third. Yeah.
So I mean, it's just the natural progression of a personal project that car
because
guys
it just makes sense as you learn and as you uncover the possibilities of what you've done in the past with other clients or yourself, and then as this project takes up a lot of time between 2009 and now, and you're barely touching on it, you're like, well, I didn't get that far into that. I can change it. I can change it. It's the evolution of it, and at some point you have to let's freeze it. Let's bake the cake and let's get it done.
I was real close at the end of 2020 to doing that, and then we, turned the whole thing over again.
Yeah.
But that's good. This project basically went from January 2022 to April 2022.
Today.
Yeah.
Yeah, from sketches.
0 to 60.
Yeah, 0 to 60. Zero to we almost have a car. But it's coming along. But yeah, I'm grateful that we got to do this together.
Agreed.
Let's see it through.
And I think we're doing it in one of the most fun ways we can.
Yeah.
With a lot of eyes.
Even though you make me crazy.
Yeah. Like we're saying.
As you're going through the journey of from 2009 all the way up and how this thing's evolved, and then 2017 I started sniffing around and looking at this thing, and then so 2017, if you back up to 2013, I was at Pikes Peak and we were running Jeff Swartz's car. We modified a 997 Cup car. We put a twin turbo engine in it and went up and found some success. We did that 13, 14, 15, but in 13 was a special year for me because Peugeot came out with the 908 Pikes Peak hill climb car, and my jaw was on the ground when I first saw this thing. When I first heard it, this thing was a beast of a car and a presence. And I watched how quickly that car moved through the mountain and which I thought our car was insane. So it was a 650, 700 horsepower Cup car, which is arguably a very quick car. Made it look like it was the Prius cruising through a parking lot. And the time showed. I mean, we ran a 947 at that time. Maybe, no, it was a 10-minute something. It was something like that, which was still arguably pretty quick. They ran an 8:13, 8 minutes and 13 seconds, 156 turns, 4,000, 5,000 foot elevation change. But ever since then, I've obsessed on that car. What did they do? How did they do it? So they pulled a bunch of parts from their prototype world. And so in the back of my mind, I've constantly tried to figure out how do we take a 911 and even get close to that. And for the longest time, I thought that it wouldn't be possible. I just said, you know what, it's fine. We can race here in our class and we can do our modifying the cars and have fun. And then honestly, as I drove the Ultimate GTR and I saw your SV F1 at Chuck Wall that one day when we were out there, and it started kind of coming to me that I think with what you've come up with, if we tweak it and we wrap what you wanted to do around with the end goal of competing at Pikes Peak, and change some fundamental drivetrain designs, we can actually build something that could haul ass up that mountain.
So from a specification standpoint, we're pretty close to what that Peugeot was.
Yeah.
Weight's very similar.
Yep.
Power arguably more.
Yeah.
Grip same.
Yep.
Aero similar.
Maybe more.
We'll see.
Yeah. And then we have also 9 years of suspension technology ahead of us. We have
I think
9
we're doing
years
something with this car that will benefit us a lot in terms of low speed grip and high speed stability.
Yeah, I agree. Which that will all unfold here in the next 4 weeks. But yeah, I think so that you know there's a lot of cars that influenced my thought process of what I was asking of you. You know what else? Another one was the Hoonigan, the Hoonicorn, that Mustang, the all-wheel drive Mustang, just a beast. And that's actually the same gearbox we have in here. Same front differential was in their rear differential. So I'm just picking and choosing different things that I found impressive and packaging it in the SVRSR the best way we can, and with one goal in mind, to go compete, get a record in time attack 1, and be amongst the 8-minute group, which only 5 people have crossed that at Pikes so far. 6 people, I believe. 6 people have been in the 8-minute range. So we're going to be either 6 or 7. I don't know if it's 5 or 6.
And the Peugeot was 8 minutes and
13 seconds, deep in the 8s.
Yeah.
So the fastest time we ever did was a 9:23, and it's still the fastest 911 ever up the hill. So we'll crush that. Yeah, I don't need any of that shit. We're just gonna go and do it.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I can't wait to see this thing go up the mountain. And thanks for chatting through this whole process. It's been, for me, 13 years in the making, and you jumped into the middle of it and made it exponentially better. So
Thanks for making it happen.
appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, let's do it.